If you're looking for the ultimate apple dessert for fall, look no further than these apple dumplings with sparkling cider sauce. I'm Whitney from Sweet Cayenne, and I'm going to show you how to make a recipe inspired by my favorite dessert as a kid that my granny would make for me, old-fashioned apple dumplings. Now, Granny's version involved using a can of crescent roll dough to wrap the apples in, and then a brown sugar sauce with a secret ingredient, Mountain Dew. Have you had this before? I've taken Granny's recipe and updated it to include a homemade puff pastry dough, and then my secret ingredient in the brown sugar sauce is sparkling apple cider. This actually makes a perfect substitute for Mountain Dew and tastes even better in my opinion. Okay, so the first step for making our apple dumpling dough is to mix together the dry ingredients. So I'm going to measure out some flour, and we need 2 cups of flour. And so the way I measure is to stir up the flour to aerate it a little bit, scoop out, and then level off the top. And of course you can measure with a scale if you want to, and I'll have the grams measurement listed below. So there's 1 cup, then we'll scoop again, and level it off, just like that. 2 cups. And then we need a half teaspoon of baking powder, and then 3/4 of a teaspoon of sea salt. You want like a fine ground sea salt so that it will mix in well and be incorporated into the dough. And then 1 tablespoon of sugar, and I'm using pure cane sugar here just because I like the deeper, more mapley flavor that it has. Then once that is all in the mixing bowl, just turn it on low to combine it. Just for a few seconds. And then once it's combined, we're actually going to put the mixing bowl and the paddle attachment into the freezer for 20 minutes. And while that's in the freezer, we're also going to put our butter in the freezer. This is 2 sticks or 1 cup of butter diced into 1-inch cubes. So that's going to go in the freezer, and then we've also got a 1/2 cup of sour cream. So the reason why I'm putting all of these in the freezer is that it's going to help our dough be really cold as we're mixing it together and yield a nice fluffy, flaky pastry dough for our apple dumplings. And actually the sour cream is going to go in the fridge. These will go in the freezer. Now that everything's nice and chilled, we're going to turn the mixer on low speed and then start adding our butter chunks a few at a time, like 3 or 4 cubes at a time. So now our mixture looks like it's got broken pieces of walnut in it, which is just what we want. And so I'm going to make a well in the very center and then add the sour cream. So now that the sour cream's in there, we just want to mix it on low for about a minute till it just starts to get combined. Okay, so we just want to dump our dough mixture onto this plastic wrap, just like that, and then just gently pat it into a mound. You don't want to overwork it, but we just want to get it in one kind of big clump, but as it rests, like I told you, it's going to come together and we'll be able to roll it out into one piece. That looks good. So then we just want to wrap it up really tightly and chill it in the fridge overnight. So you want to give this a really good chill, at least 8 hours before you attempt to roll it out. And wrap it up nice and tight, as tightly as you can, and then just kind of smush it all together, and it's ready to chill. After the overnight chill, place your dough on a floured sheet of parchment paper, then roll it out into a large rectangle. Once you have your rectangle, you'll fold the 2 ends of the rectangle in towards the center, just like you would do if you were folding a letter. You're going to roll it out into a rectangle again, fold it like a letter, and then use your hands just to shape it into a nice smooth rectangle. This rolling and folding technique builds layers of flaky, buttery pastry into the dough that will yield a wonderful texture once the dumplings are made. Once the dough is in a nice rectangle, transfer it to a sheet of plastic wrap, then refrigerate it for 1 hour. After that second chill, put your rectangle on a floured sheet of parchment paper and roll it out again into a large rectangle that measures 12 inches wide and 18 inches long. Once it's rolled out, you'll cut that rectangle into 8 squares, and then you'll cut 8 squares into 2 triangles. I like to use a bench knife to do this, and I will link one for you in the description box below. Next, you'll want to peel and quarter 4 large Granny Smith apples. You'll need 16 pieces of apple total for the dumplings. So if your apples are on the smaller side, like mine were, you can cut the apples into thirds. Just make sure you have 16 pieces. Next, you'll want to melt 8 tablespoons or 1 stick of unsalted butter in a saucepan over medium heat. Then stir in 3/4 of a cup of packed dark brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, a pinch of salt. Then stir that up and melt it till it's well incorporated and makes a thick sauce. Set it aside to cool for a few minutes while you roll out the dumplings. Okay, so I'm just wrapping up our apple quarters in the dough triangles. This is just like what my grandmother would do with crescent rolls. And it's okay if part of the apple is exposed. You just want to fold the corners up and in and kind of like just smush it around the edges of the apple as much as you can. It's perfectly fine if the top of the apple is exposed. That's what makes it really pretty and rustic looking. So I'm just going to keep wrapping my apples in the dough, just like so, pushing it up and over the sides, and then I'll place them in my buttered baking dish right here. I'm using an enameled cast iron brazier to make these apple dumplings in, just because I think the presentation is really pretty. My brazier is candy apple red, so it looks great when the apple dumplings are baked and golden brown. But you could use any casserole dish to bake these in. You could use like a 9x13 rectangular glass pan. It just needs to be big because you're gonna have 16 dumplings total. So as you can see there, the tops of the apples are exposed through the dumpling, and that's okay. This is a really rustic looking dish, and so it's going to be just fine if the dumpling dough doesn't completely cover the apples on top. So now what I'm going to do is the butter brown sugar mixture that we melted on the stove top. I'm just going to give it one last quick stir, and then I'm going to pour it all over the top of the dumpling. So my grandmother's recipe called for pouring Mountain Dew around the apple dumplings, but my updated version uses sparkling apple cider. So for this part, you want to pour the apple cider around the edges of the dumplings, not directly on top, just around the edges of the pan. And this is going to combine with that butter mixture and make a really delicious silky sauce. So we're going to put 1.5 cups of sparkling apple cider on the sides of the dumplings, just like that, not covering them. And now it's time to bake them. So we're going to bake these at 375 for 15 minutes, then reduce the heat to 350 and bake an additional 45 minutes until the sauce is bubbling and thickened and apple dumplings are golden brown. Okay, it's time for the moment I've been waiting for all day. Time to enjoy the fruits of my labor in the kitchen. Perfectly caramelized and thick, and the puff pastry dough is crispy. For me, you know that I cannot eat apple dumplings without a scoop of vanilla ice cream on top. I am an ice cream fanatic, and I will eat it any chance that I get. Just get a nice scoop right on top, and now my reward for my hard work. Time to take a bite. Ugh, I cannot wait. That was a messy bite, but a delicious one. These are best when they're served fresh and hot out of the oven while they're still warm. That is amazing. I cannot wait for you to try this apple dumpling recipe. I've got everything you need to make it listed in the description box below, including a printable version of the recipe. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment below and tell me what you'd like me to make next. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so that you'll always be notified whenever I post a new video. In the meantime, be sure to check out this dessert playlist over here for more sweet treats, and I'll see you in the next dessert video. What's going on?